Thank you ever so much for that, John. There is a forgotten, nay almost forbidden word, a word that means more to me than any other. That word is England. It's a famous quote. It's a famous quote by Sir Winston Churchill. So tonight I stand here unashamedly as an Englishman talking about England and how we should be governed. I will also be talking about how England fits in within the Union and ask us to ponder what is open to us, the opportunities that we have. When we say we love our country, that it means more than anything to us, we need really to establish what our history tells us about ourselves. Our sense of belonging, our sense of fight, and if being English now is different from our forefathers. We can only hope to get close to understanding where we are as a nation if we look back at the characters from our past, by picking out those stories and quotes. Those lessons from our history should resonate with our code of values now. It is those personalities that inspire us, will give us courage, and will give us comfort and a reassurance in adversity. By looking back, we can move ahead with confidence and be there for England when she needs us, which is now. But how bad is the situation for England as a nation? Am I exaggerating? Does England really need her citizens to stand up and be counted for her? Well, let me explain how bad the current situation truly is. England has no constitutional or political existence by itself. It can be argued that England really is the last British colony. In fact, those are not my words, they are the words that come from the Encyclopaedia Britannica, and it describes England thus. Outside the British Isles, England is often erroneously considered synonymous with the island of Great Britain, even with the entire United Kingdom. Despite the political, economic and cultural legacy that has secured its name, England no longer officially exists as a governmental or political unit, unlike Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland, which all have varying degrees of self-government. Just contemplate how serious that is for us all here. England no longer officially exists. It's worth contemplating. However, that situation is made worse because there is grit in the wound, because we need to remember that alongside England's political non-existence, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland have dedicated governments focusing on their national economic growth. They have national strategies and national vision and a government structure equipped to turn that vision into a reality. England does not have a national government, nor does it have a vision or a main party that produces a manifesto of any worth for its people. Devolution has continued to leave England wanting in terms of a national vision and strategy. And that does need to change. And it needs to change quickly if you believe in saving the Union. If not, then it is independence for England versus England disappearing off the table. What is your choice? Because it's as serious as that. There is a void in England's democracy, and the lack of her government is allowing instability and dissatisfaction amongst the English to grow. Far too much attention has been given to the SNP and their lust for independence, whilst England and English annoyance has been growing and simmering on the side. You only need to look at the political parties, and Labour in particular, to see that over the last few years they have been running around as headless chickens, fretting over losing Scotland or potentially losing Wales. Why? Because they cannot face loving England. Political falls, and that might sound very strong there, but political falls does come to mind, because it's only through English engagement that they will return to power. However, as John said early on, one of UKIP's potential leaders has declared now that he wants to see an English Parliament. So Labour's rejection of England and its misplaced love of regionalisation of a country, which essentially means the break-up of England, will allow UKIP to usurp them. I feel sorry for Labour, having to put up with Gordon Brown celebrating over the last few days Scottish and the Welsh nations, but he actually rejected England's right to national determination. His words could easily be construed as anti-English racism. So it will be interesting to see if UKIP's vision means that they want an English administration, an English First Minister. But instead of tackling a usurper, Labour and the Conservatives have pretended that devolution at a local level has been developing across England. But that is not true, because it's confused and dysfunctional devolution, and it's not giving a true voice to the people across all of England. It's city versus rural, city versus village and town, industrial areas versus agricultural areas. How much better it could be if we had rational, coherent, structured decentralisation of power linked at the conception of an English Parliament that respected local communities. It was right when the last government, the coalition, came to power, when it actually dismantled the hugely unpopular regional governments and regional quangos. But they failed to address the real problem. They didn't replace it with anything substantial. There should have been an English Parliament accountable to the people of England at that time. A national federal system should have been created then. The British government at that time let down the people of England, and by doing so, they let down the United Kingdom, and they broke the very principles of the 1707 Act of Union. And that Act of Union said that all citizens should be treated equally across the UK. Instead, after the Scottish referendum, the Conservative government introduced English votes on English laws, and by doing so, probably upset a number of Scots and English at the same time. So well done, David Cameron. But English votes on English laws will fail to answer the English question. And it will fail for a number of reasons. The first being, it is just a procedural device. It has no force of legislation, and it can be reversed at any time. 2, the votes of English MPs can still be overturned, as we saw with extended Sunday trading. It can be overturned by Scottish, Welsh and Northern Irish MPs. 3, it does not restrict the ability of a government at Westminster to appoint ministers of English affairs from other countries of the UK. 4, English laws are still proposed by a British government and revised and scrutinised by a House of Lords containing members from across all the UK. Whereas laws passed in the devolved administrations are not subject to that scrutiny. 5, there is no administration devoted solely to English affairs, and members of select committees for English matters include members from the SNP. An SNP who openly declares they will put Scotland first above all else. And finally, in 6, it really does not address the lack of representation for England in the British Irish Council. And also, if we see recently with the Brexit discussions, where was England in those discussions? Also, though, in the room and family across our country, we cannot ignore the financial reality that has occurred over the decades. The British government, red and blue, has treated the English taxpayer as a cash cow. They haven't listened to the concerns of English men and women. All they have wanted is their money. Yes, I'm actually talking about the Barnett formula. The British elite should feel ashamed because it should have been abolished before now. But unfortunately, they've pledged to keep favouring the Scots in a naive belief that the SNP will be bought off. And I can talk from personal experience. Sitting in Edinburgh with the SNP special advisors, they were very clear that they would take as much as they could financially along their route to independence from a British government. That means the English taxpayer will be expected to pay even more.